Yo, hello everyone. Welcome back to Skill Issues, episode 11, I believe it is. And yeah, is it morning? Is it evening? For us, it's morning. And as I can tell you, it's quite early for you as well.
Amazing question, man. Yeah, look, there are
Yeah.
bags under my eyes for those who are audio listeners, perhaps. But yeah, no, we're here, we're bright and early, we're ready to go, and we're seizing the day, Pavlos. You remember when I
We
said that a
are.
couple of episodes ago, is
Seize
to
the day. Oh
seize
my
the day?
god.
That's why we're here. It's just you and
Shout
I as
out.
well. It's actually quite cozy. It's
Yeah.
just the two of us. We're going to be, waxing lyrical about a whole host of different random things with the general scope of esports somewhere amongst it all.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than other times. But one thing that isn't different is that we always start off the week with talking about topics of esports and gaming, things that
Mhm.
have happened. And one very interesting thing that has happened, and it's has definitely made our day by seeing it, is that Keanu Reeves has been given the role of Shadow for the next Sonic V. How do we feel about that? I love Keanu Reeves personally. Who
I'm
doesn't?
happy about it. I've still not seen the second Sonic film, so I'm not gonna be, walking
Okay.
straight into the theater and watching it. It might be like over the next 20 years of my life or something. There are situations where I find myself in a position where I'm able to watch a Sonic film. Maybe another 5, 10 years passes, and I'm thinking about it again. So maybe I'll catch up to it, and who knows how many Sonic films they've made by then. But I do like Keanu Reeves. Of course, he was also in the Cyberpunk game as a voice actor, so there's a little bit of overlap there. The
Look,
guy does like himself a good game.
he does, and we do love our celebrities that play the video games. But you know what? Something that just struck me is that many people don't watch Sonic movies, haven't played the games, but will
Hmm.
probably just go watch it just because Keanu Reeves is in the movie. So I'll probably be one of those people, to be fair. But yeah, it's one of those another video game adaptations that um, have had a fairly good success. Give me a gun, Dr. Eggman.
Yeah, it
That's the topic.
If you remind yourself though, Pavlov, it started off really bad. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
with Sonic when before they, sent the animators back into the labor camp to go ahead and like make him actually look like Sonic. It didn't. It looked like a weird deformed rat with the same color eyes. So I guess if you want to talk the good, the bad, the ugly, that was the ugly, but it went good in the end.
Yeah, and also, um, what came first, the video game or the cartoon series? From oh my
Oh
god,
my god,
oh my
yeah.
god, that's gonna
So
haunt my nightmares.
that's what he looked like. So this is again another reason why you should subscribe to Skill Issues Live on YouTube. Or maybe not. Maybe you'd like to keep your ears safe the way that you would your eyes. But it had like human teeth, a real hedgehog nose, and then I don't even know how to describe the eyes, to be honest, but it just didn't look like it should be there. It was very uncanny valley. Can you remember, Pavlos, back when the internet was, quite fresh and new, but people had the tools to start creating
Yeah,
abominations, and people were like, oh, those brand of YouTube videos with the black background blue wall of text with the Comic Sans font that you could make in Microsoft Movie Maker or Windows Movie Maker, for those who remember it. With the same music in the background, it'd be like, oh, this is what The Simpsons would look like in real life, or this is what the new Xbox is going to look like in real life. And it's like a hyper realistic render of a character or something. With music blaring over it in the
yeah,
background. It's like Homer Simpson, but it looks like a person, and it's really strange. And I feel like that's what the old Sonic was like before they changed him.
yeah. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's one of those very early video games as well. It's like it's along the same lines as Mario, right? Which
Sure.
has existed for so long. The very first game, which was the first console that ever came through. First appearance came in
Uh,
Sega AM3's racing game Rad Mobile. 5 months before. Okay, so very old. 1991 was the first
mhm.
time this game was released, or at least Sonic made his first appearance. Um, and yeah, and I feel like they've tried adapting it to various TV shows, whether that's cartoon or whatnot, for a very long time. So yeah, I think it's one of the very first attempts of them trying to do something like that. But I want to kind of bring things to the more general standpoint of video game adaptations, right? There have been some very successful ones, and there have been some very crap ones, right? Do you want to start with your favorite and your worst, which is the best one you've seen, best video game adaptation you've seen, and then contrast it with the worst video game adaptation that you've seen?
Well, the question is, what has Keanu Reeves got to do with all of this? And it's because, you know, we're talking video game adaptations. We had Last of Us recently as well, which was supposed to be good. I didn't see it. But that had Pedro Pascal in it. So we're talking another mainstream actor. We're talking the Mario Brothers movie, which I also didn't see. So it's not exactly the best track record for me to be talking about this. But that had Chris Pratt in it, as everything does these days, apparently.
Is there a reason you haven't seen these? Is there have they kind of been stigmatized in your brain? They're video game adaptations.
Not particularly.
How good are they actually gonna be?
I just thought I would go and watch it. But I won't lie, to just go on a more personal level here.
Sure, yeah.
I've been in a relationship now for 4 months, and I think before thank you, wow, it's an esports rarity. Before the 4 months, I think I'd probably go to like maybe 2 or 3 films a year. Like if all of my friends were like, oh, let's go and watch Barbie and Oppenheimer, and that was it. That was the year done. And then I think I also watched like the Spider-Man, the animated Spider-Man film, because I'd been, you know, watching those, the Miles Morales ones, and that was really good.
True.
But since being in a relationship, it's like, yo, just go to the cinema, go watch some films. Like I was really interested in watching more, and it does also help that that my dad has like the Odeon Unlimited thing. So I'm like, yo,
I have
Dad,
no idea what that
just
is.
can I get a ticket, please? He's like, yeah, okay. So you just go and do it, right? Because you pay a subscription, and then it's like you can watch as many films as you like. So I've just been absolutely milking it to like watch as many as I can.
To all the audio listeners, he did
of course
the actual hand gesture of milking.
Yeah, but I did actually.
Have you got experience milking then?
Films, yeah, but like to just sort of step away for a second and talk more about these adaptations then. Another one I watched was Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think the best way for me to describe that would probably be it's like a streets won't forget kind of moment, you know, like if you are someone who has studied the lore, if you've played the games, perhaps if you have an interest in Five Nights at Freddy's or anything surrounding it, you're really going to enjoy it. You're going to love it, right? It's a film that you'll say, yeah, you know what, I like this. There are a couple of like continuity differences, and it wasn't exactly the same, but you had all of the references you wanted. You had an appearance from MatPat from Game Theory, so as long as you're sort of like vaguely in there, like you had Corey Kenshin as well. Like all of the YouTubers were coming out the woodwork to do this film.
Was Markiplier in it by any chance?
He actually wasn't, and that was because of conflicting schedules, because he's working on his own film called Iron Lung, I believe it is. So we'll see what that looks like.
Okay.
However, back to, you know, my dad and his unlimited cinema tickets, he watched it and he was like, I thought it was ass. I didn't understand it. I thought it was bad. And there was a I forgot the guy's name. I'm trying to remember. It's not Steve Carey, is it? No. What's the guy called? Steve Carey's just someone I've made up. I've just put two names together.
No idea, mate. Could be John Smith.
Pavlos, you carry this one on. What are your thoughts on this while I look it up?
Yeah, all good. I mean, I haven't seen Five Nights at Freddy's, and I can understand the concept of if it's got references that nerds that have played the game know it inside out would appreciate, but then doesn't have any good story cycle to kind of gain the following and appreciation of anybody that is a stranger to the franchise. And then, you know,
it's assumed knowledge, right?
It's assumed knowledge, but at the same time, you've got to figure out, okay, what's your target audience here? If your target audience is people that have played the game, and you expect all of those people to just watch the movie, be the revenue source from all the ticket sales and everything like that, sure, okay. But if you want a wider audience and want to, appeal to people that haven't played the games and actually grow the franchise due to the movie being more generally looking and generally appealing, I think it's a matter of the company that makes the movie's choice at the start, right? For me, Last of Us was the best video game adaptation I've ever seen. I think as a series, but that being said, I've never played Last of Us. I've never played Last of Us.
That's interesting.
I've watched playthroughs, some of them. I don't remember who was it. PewDiePie? I probably watched PewDiePie play The Last of Us, and I'm not sure if I've seen the entire thing. But as a series, as the first season that I've seen, I really appreciated it. The acting, the story writing, the emotions.
The rope physics. No, that was in the game though, right?
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and that says a lot because I also saw Arcane and I appreciated Arcane a lot. And Arcane, for anyone that doesn't know, is a League of Legends adaptation. As a TV
misery!
Show, a Netflix show.
Yeah, it has another Imagine Dragons song as
of course, it's got an Imagine Dragons song. I've got to love it, right?
This is the thing, right? Like, I think just popular influence is important. And to go back on what I was saying, I looked it up. It was Nicolas Cage that I was looking for. I don't know who the fuck Steve Carey is. It was near Steve Carell, but I sort of made it up.
Steve Carey.
It is what it is, right? He was like, "Oh man."
How do you spell Carey, man?
Carey. It's made up. My dad was just like, "Oh, man, it reminds me of a Nicolas Cage film I watched called Willy's Wonderland, and it's just like a janitor who goes to a place with possessed robots, and it's the same thing."
Yeah.
It was a rip-off of Five Nights at Freddy's even, but I guess it's like this assumed knowledge that we're talking about, and a show that did that really well, I think, and sort of blended it in where the assumed knowledge was kind of like built on top of other things, and they've started to now develop the world further, would be Fallout. And I've only watched, the first 4 episodes, but I think it's really good. I think some of the casting decisions were amazing too. I am a huge fan of Matt Berry as Mr. Handy, with like the classic sort of "I'm going to harvest your," like he has the right sort of British sarcastic tone that fits very well. And to also go.
I see it then?
100%, man. Especially if you like Fallout, you're gonna love it, and you may just sort of love it anyway. And to sort of like go one step further as well. The point I was making is about producers. You said there, it depends which company picks it up, because it's through Amazon Prime. It's also got a bit of like the gritty boys element to it, where it's like super violent in places and stuff, and like all of that, like the gore and stuff mixed in, but not in a way that's like so overly intense that it's like. In The Boys, I don't know how much Boys you've watched when they're like jumping down various cavities and then making things explode.
It's so much gore.
It's not on that kind of level, but it's also the kind of thing where there's mechanized arms crushing things and stuff like that.
For anybody that hasn't seen The Boys, at some point a whale gets thrown. I don't know if anybody's seen the scene.
Which series is this?
Oh, I don't know.
Or season. Oh, I guess the new season isn't out, right? Because I've not seen Gen Z, but I have seen or Gen whatever it's called, right? The one.
Either way,
the superhero one. Gen
a
V,
whale's intestines are exploded on a beach. That's the level of gore we're talking about for The Boys.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more about the part where someone jumped inside a cock and then exploded. Like,
I mean, one of the that also, but also the opening scene. The opening scene is when the main character's girlfriend dies because a juiced up superhero runs straight through her, which means she just becomes blobs of gore and blood.
It's okay.
Anyway,
I upload the audio onto Spotify, so I'm the one that's got to flag it as explicit because I've just said that, so it's fine. But yeah, all the other episodes are as well. Make sure to give us 5 stars on Spotify. Thanks, guys. Hey. But are there any other bad adaptations that you've got an idea before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this?
I usually
episode?
avoid them because I don't watch them straight off the rip. I often wait to see reviews and stuff. Like there was this World of Warcraft one that I thought had some pretty bad reviews, so I never really bothered with it. Have you watched that one?
No, I haven't. There's an example that I could give though, which isn't bad, I don't think it was probably one of the good ones. I genuinely did enjoy it, but it's like on the same level as video game movies was Ready Player One, because that was just like everything
Ooh.
at once, you know.
You
But that
see,
was actually
you
adapted
see.
from a book.
Right. Have you read the book?
No.
If you had read the book, okay, if you would have read the book, you would appreciate that movie even more, but at the same time be like, holy shit, there was so much missed potential. As many of the books are, right? Because whenever you base a movie on a book, there's always going to be, oh, the book is going to be better. And I'm one of those guys right now, one of those people that are saying, oh, the book was better. And it was. But, you know, the book itself was based on games like World of Warcraft, many different games, actually. Racing games, and it all blended into one. Kind of a futuristic look on how life would look like for a gamer later on, and it actually became mainstream. Games became mainstream because you could just put a headset on, put your suit on if you had money for a proper suit. Some of them just had the headset and tried to find advantages that way, and they just entered a different world where that world was 1,000 times better than the world
The
that
Oasis,
we live in
right?
now.
Isn't what it's called?
The Oasis. I forgot about it. It's been a while. Yeah, it was interesting because people could have their own identities within it. They could level up. It was a different type of prestige that was recognized in real life as well.
Yeah. Because the real life elements were blended differently, you know?
Is that it brought a kid's fantasies alive. You know, when you play a game and you level up and that is your life, it actually brought that to the surface. And I kind of really enjoyed that from both the movie and the book.
Well, that's the thing. It brought it to life until it wasn't, because they were all in a slum. And then everyone towards the end got, like, you know, held captive. And when they met each other in real life, it's like, oh, you're a completely different person. The big muscular dude is like some random woman who works a 9 to 5, you know?
Yeah.
Like the guy that looks like a huge rock isn't even a guy. It was crazy. You know, you can be whatever you want. I think that's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of the internet anyway. And to go back, I feel like make great books again, guys, please, because I watched the Dune film recently, and now I want to read the books. Whereas I feel like I haven't wanted to read a book for such a long time because there wasn't any books that particularly interested me. I don't know. This is a great way to tangent us into what we wanted to talk about today, which is basically just interviewing each other and what's up with us. And Pavlos, I guess I can spin that to you then. In terms of like literature, as someone who's a commentator who's constantly trying to bolster their vocabulary, I imagine, and bring new things to the table, is that something that you do often? Or not really?
On and off. I feel like there are parts of the year that I might read. You know, there'd be 2 months that I'll read 3-4 books, and there might be the rest of the year, like 10 months that I won't read a single one. And it's I don't know. It comes in waves. It comes as a phase. I try to read books, but then again, listening to myself say I try to read books, I don't try hard enough. Because if I did try, I would be reading more books.
It's true. It's the same thing with me. I remember there was like several events around the UK that I wanted to go to. Maybe it was an Insomnia Gaming Festival, an iSeries. Maybe it was an Epic LAN. Maybe it was like a Newell University esports production in Nottingham, or like an Amazon thing or whatever, and I put Where the Crawdads Sing in my backpack, which is a book, and of course no shit we're talking about books, and I was like, I'm gonna go read it on the train. And it's just sort of sat unread in my backpack. And I'm like, every time I go to an event, I bring it with me. I'm pretty sure that book has been halfway across the country. I think the book probably came to Spain with me, if I remember correctly. It may even have come to Germany when I went to Berlin. That is a very well-traveled book that has not been read. So, it's just about sitting down and wanting to engage with it, right? And getting away from like video media or like blue screen, blue light, I guess.
That's very true. And also with the book, I feel like once you leave it, you have to start again. Once you leave it for amount of time, you need to restart it, go a few pages back, remember it, have a feel for it, because there are names you forget, and then you feel a bit out of touch, and then if you don't, and if that's the case, you probably don't really want to get into it.
Unlike a TV show.
And it's so easy to just pop the TV show on. When
Exactly.
Each episode has got a mini recap at the beginning.
That's
as
what
well.
I was about to say. It's not like you open the book last time on Lord of the Rings or whatever, you know? You don't get that. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, I use those books literally as like a monitor stand for a good amount of time. Like not until I changed desks was Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers propping up my my second monitor. So,
all right.
yeah,
well, since we're asking questions to each other,
sure.
I want to ask you.
Oh no!
Bring out the questions.
The way that you what led into that is so suspect. Like, since we're asking questions, where were you last Friday at 5:42 p.m.? What's your alibi?
Where were you Friday?
That is a good question, I imagine.
Yeah.
Probably preparing for the first round of Polaris playoffs.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So, the question.
Come on then, spit it out.
Why did you want to do casting rather than anything else in esports? Because I imagine you became an esports fan and then you were like, wait, I like casting. Why is that? Why casting more than anything else?
More than anything else, maybe I just like the sound of my own voice. No, not particularly. I feel like at times, and this is just me personally, but as a commentator, I've always been someone who has held myself to an incredibly high standard, even since I started out right at the beginning. I can remember making my first few reels and being like, well, this has got to do, but it is complete ass. Like, I'm not enjoying this at all. And, you know, always wanting to improve, but, you know, own personal goals and development aside, my reasons for wanting to do it, I don't know. Commentary is always something that's really interested me. You know, what value added can you bring? How can you tell a story? How can you really build these characters? Because my way of seeing it is, in a server, it's like 10 humans that are there, right? And for all of them, and I've said this a couple of times recently explaining it to people, like, this is the most interesting thing that they've got going on in their lives right now. Whether they're salaried or they're semi-professional and this is their escape from, you know, working a job, which is ultimately keeping the embers of this dream stoked a little bit longer. Like, that's everything. And honestly, being able to tell those stories is a very privileged position that you're in. And just to go back sort of when I was starting out, I can even remember way before that, like years before, I say starting out, like this is before I even touched a microphone. Back when I was still doing like YouTube and stuff, I remember going to a football match one time and it was a really boring match and I was just sat there with my cousin and as a joke we were like commentating the game in the stand, like just talking to each other with like, you know, moving your balled fists, pretending it's a microphone, just talking about stuff that was happening. Like I also used to follow a lot of radio commentary because, you know, for my football team, Norwich, when we're playing in like League One in sort of 2010 or the Championship, there still aren't good quality streams to watch every single fixture that's taking place because there are so many matches. So you do rely on like regionalized radio stations, and that is a very different type of commentary because it's completely descriptive. I even saw Shio recently, shout out to him, did like a radio commentary for VCT Masters, and following along it's like very different. Like action will break out and then he'll have to just take a step back, rewind and be like, okay, so this is how it pans out, and sort of read it back to you in a way because it's so hard to like in the moment make sense of it, I guess, which is really strange. But it's funny to think that even esports at its roots was like, you know, a radio commentary over the top of a VOD because there wasn't like actual live streams to follow with. Like I'm pretty sure in League of Legends that's how they used to operate. So that's even where the term shoutcaster came from. But for me, no, it was more just like a story thing. I think I've always been a creative person, and it's just like, you know, the next logical outlet for that, and one which I've become absorbed in entirely over the last like 2 years or so.
So you'd say that right at the start, the reason why you wanted to get into it was just because of, not just, but wanting to paint stories.
Kind of. And like the whole fixation on sports that I had before with football and stuff, you know, and how that sort of links in. And
competition.
Yeah, like little moments and things as well that stick with you. Like I can list so many iconic lines off the top of my head
Hmm.
from stuff like my football team and big moments that they've had in recent years, but then also esports itself. I think, to be honest, sometimes what the commentator says is like almost more iconic than the moment that happened. They go
Yeah.
hand in hand. If you think about the old ones, the OG ones, like the Pansy, Kelly when he jumps over, the inhuman reactions, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, the Olaf boost, things like that. Yeah, they stick with you, and I think I can also remember just like playing CS and I was playing with my friends, and this was before I even had the name Hazza JC. I was like, what would be the best name for like a commentator? What would sound like the best for like an American commentator as well? So I was like, Cryptics sounds like it would be a really good name, with like
No way.
KRYPTICZ,
Yeah.
Cryptics. And I remember we were joking around doing like fake commentator voices and like just playing a casual game mode where it's like 10v10 on CS:GO, which is absolute like
Yeah.
mayhem basically. Um, but yeah, like those were the vibes, man. I don't know.
Beautiful.
I was just enjoying myself, honestly.
Nice. Did you? I don't know. I feel like this has turned into a little bit of an interview here, but
It has.
what? Feel free to turn any other questions
No, of
my
course.
way.
I mean,
But
my one would
okay.
just be to like sort of immediately volley that back at you. What
Okay.
would you say your side at? Because I wanted to ask, because I saw you actually put up a tweet the other day, and maybe Harry can put it on screen as well. And I can see you sort of looking around like, hang on a minute, what did I actually tweet? I don't remember. When you were saying about like, several years ago, I went on a first date. And
Oh my
then
god.
they asked me what would I want to do in the future.
Oh
Yeah,
my
when I was
god. You've
16,
got it ready.
17, I
Jeez.
want to be an esports commentator 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And it took you what, 3 more years to then get into it. So when
Yeah.
did the penny drop that that's something that you wanted to do in the first place? When did you get your first opportunity? How did you manage to sort of put the two together, and where did it start? Did it start before esports? Because I know you've done like paddle now as well, right? Like
Yeah.
you've done some actual sports stuff. So
And some others coming up. Hint, hint.
ooh,
Interestingly enough, can't announce just yet, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes as well. Just because it isn't confirmed, not because.
fair enough.
Just to don't want to lay out expectations, something that may not happen. But yeah. I think it all came down to timing, having time also, but also realizing that no one's gonna hand me any experience, and I have to chase it for myself.
Yep.
I was a little bit late to realizing that. Um, at the time, 16, 17, I was in high school. There was like no time for anything else apart from studying. The Cypriot school system is kind of rough, or the way that things have developed. And were, at least while I was growing up. I don't know how things may have changed right now, but so we'd have high school, right? And many would consider that the Cyprian exams at the end of the year, at the end of high school, weren't considered enough to qualify to European universities or British universities, which was essentially the goal for many people at the time. It's like, and they also didn't think well enough of the Cypriot universities. I don't think that's as much as the case anymore. But for the people that considered the grades useful for the Cypriot system, went all in on it, and the schools weren't good enough to teach you the curriculum. So everybody took extra lessons throughout the afternoon as well. So they went to extra school after school. So the entire day was filled up with lessons, right? And aside from that, I also did IGCSEs and A levels. So I did a lot of studying during high school. I had no time. It was a lot of studying, a lot of lessons, for all the reasons I've listed. So during that time, never really went after it. In my spare time, if I had any, I stayed up at night, played video games. That's it. Watched esports. Then military, quite obvious. don't have time in the military to do anything else with your life. And then I went to uni. When I went to uni for the first 6 months, I didn't really have a good computer with me. I had a really shitty laptop.
Yeah.
And I then shipped my whole PC case when I went back to Cyprus to, by the way, context, I went to the Netherlands for it.
I was just about to say, yeah.
So I deconstructed my PC, put it in a suitcase when I went back for Christmas holidays. And when I returned to Amsterdam, I set it up all together. I didn't take my case.
I bought
another case, and it was too small, so I had to saw through the case to fit my GPU. By the way,
what? I was just about to say, like, what is it like transferring those components in a suitcase as well? Because I've never moved my PC. My PC, in effect, is still the same one that 14-year-old boy put together with his very hands.
Yeah. It was all
parts.
Money I had saved up. That PC, and I'd had since high school, so it wasn't really high-end specs either. But it was a lot for me. It was my property. It was the most expensive thing I ever had. And I wasn't making any money, right? Student. But at the same time, I felt like I had to make the best of the situation. So I bought the cheapest case I could find to fit everything in. Motherboard died. I bought another cheap one to make it work. Case wasn't big enough to fit my GPU, so I sawed through the case. It was cheaper for me to buy a saw to then buy a new case, so that's what I did. And
that's crazy, man. You ended up going to the DIY store, like you just there buying a saw. How old had you been at the time? Like 18, 19?
I was straight out of the military, so that was 18, 19.
Yeah, 18, 19-year-old. Yeah, I'd like to buy a saw, please. Why? I'm cutting my computer case in half. Oh, okay.
So yeah, that happened, and I was like, and the whole reason I did bring the PC was, one, to have it to play games also, but two, to pursue casting. Because at that moment I realized, look, no one's going to hand me this experience. At the time I was studying computer science as well. It was the career that made sense for me academically because it was my favorite subject and also the most successful subject I had during high school. But casting was always at the back of my head. Esports was always at the back of my head. It was always there ever since the first time I said, this is what I want to be doing. I was like, I want to do it. I want to give it a go. That's the first moment I had the time, the timing also, and the facilities to do it. I started. So it took 3 years for me to have all these conditions in line for me to pursue casting.
Yeah,
I bought a shitty mic as well. It was a 20-euro mic,
just
which got popularized and became 60 euros like later on. Not because I used it, but I found a pocket in time where I could afford a mic.
That's the question I wanted to ask, because I feel like there are so many people that have like PC costs $1,000, microphone costs like less than 1/10 of that price. So what microphone was it then?
It was a Fifine. It was like a Chinese brand.
Nice.
E96 of kinds. I don't know. Whatever it was. It was just a USB mic. I literally spent days Googling what is the cheapest, best quality for its money mic I can buy. And that came up, a Chinese brand. And I did all that research. I found Blue Yeti's idiotically expensive for the quality. And then this was up, 20 euros. I was like, that's my pocket money. But yeah, that's it. 20 euros, it's back to 20 euros now. It got popularized because everybody was saying this is the best mic to buy for your money. So it went up to 60, 80 euros like after I bought it. But I managed to get it for like 20 euros. And I was like super happy with it. Yeah, I had the pink version. They've got
nice. It looks like a hairdryer.
It looks like
with the pink.
That's where it all started. Like, it had a lot of issues, but for what I needed it, starting off, commentating for free, for ESEA teams, it was all I needed and enough to get me started in learning how to commentate.
That's the thing with like education as well, to go back on what you were saying earlier. It's like, do you enjoy the subject because you're good at it, or is it because you're good at it that you enjoy it? I've just said the same thing twice, but you know what I mean? Like,
I get what you mean.
It's not from a place of passion sometimes, whereas like commentary, obviously that is where you found yourself wanting to.
I mean, You know how the school counselors, I had a school counselor in high school, and I said I want to do commentary, and you're like, well, you got all these practical lessons picked up. You're doing maths, you're doing physics, you're doing IT, doing programming. Why do you want to do this? And
Bro knows how to do chemistry
right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, and what is your chances in doing commentary? No, do this. You're good at it. You got good grades at it. And the same thing could be said about my family. They also said, yeah, do this. Why do you want to do anything else? This works. And I don't think they were wrong in their opinion. Them pushing me to find a more solid path makes sense. Me finishing computer science at university made sense. I wouldn't change that for anything, right? I've got that as a B plan. Although I doubt it will ever be put to use. Anyway, either way though, I don't blame them for not thinking commentary is something that I can actually do. It's something that I had to push myself to do. No one would be handing me that education. It's something that I had to learn myself, go through the grind of commentating games from nowhere. It's lessons that you learn through doing, not through teaching. Not through any sort of teaching or reading. It's experience that you have to build up for yourself. And if I did go to a school of broadcasting of whatnot, I might not have gotten as good or have had the passion to pursue it as much.
For sure. I don't really feel like it is such a strange route. If people are like, oh, there's a casting module on your esports course, it's I don't know. I don't want to be the guy.
Do we get into the esports course discussion now?
For just a moment. What I will say is, if the caster that you are taking your lessons from is teaching you on a university course, chances are that they're not as qualified as they could be if they're actually in a position to be casting. But then again, it depends what stage they're in their career. Maybe it's like some goat that's started a course or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, your parents were like, bro's worried about the wrong casting. You were making potions and spells instead of like commentating. But yeah, I guess that would be something to mention, right? Like your parents and how they sort of shaped your experience, right? And sort of what their opinion on the whole thing is. Because it's a big choice, a big step to make, right? To be like, yeah, I want to do this, and I guess as well to skip forwards now. Like that's your thing, man. That's your spiel. You're just full time.
I was 2 years already into commentating, right? 2022.
Same.
And I had the most successful at that point. I was 2 years already in. And at that point, I had a really successful year, like a mega successful year in comparison to the years leading up to it. It came out of nowhere. That was my leap year in commentating. That's when I felt like, okay, I'm a shit tier caster. I am getting up there. I'm closing in to a level where I can get hired for big events. I did international LAN in Sweden for Counter-Strike. I did APAC KCQ and ended up being given the final for it as well. I went to various different countries and it was the first year I made a living from it. As in, I made enough money to say, this is more than a minimum wage, so I could say, oh, there's something in it for me here. I can do something with it. And it was also the year at the end of it where I had one more year left in uni, and I came home for the summer. I remember the scene vividly. I was in the car with my dad as he picked me up from the airport, and he said, all right, so what masters are you thinking of doing? And I'm like, I don't want to do a master's now. And he's like, what? You don't want to do a master's? And I was like, no, commentating is going pretty well, and I can see it going pretty well. I've got already gigs lined up for next year. I'm making money from it. I want to see where it goes. And it's like, it took him a while to accept it. And again, I don't blame him for it at all. He wants the best for me. He wants to make sure that I'm not chasing after any stupid dream. It's something that I had to push myself and prove myself and everybody around me that it's something that I can pursue and do. He eventually realizes what I do and sees that I can make money from it and I can make a living from it. Obviously, he's concerned, and we have chats from time to time. How's work going? Do you ever think you're going to go back to school like parents do? But yeah, it's not a traditional path, and I don't expect anybody to understand it. But as long as it makes sense to me, that's enough.
For sure. I think it's always a bit like that. I've been very fortunate to be in a position where
Mhm.
my parents have both been pretty supportive. You know,
Yeah.
they both sort of say like, yeah, you know, that they can see that I enjoy it. They know that I'm you know, chasing a dream basically, right? Because that's the thing, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
nobody is in this line of work to like be the richest man on earth. I would have already cleared off and done something else if I was
Oh
in
yeah.
it to make money, you know what I mean? um but at the same time, it's like, you know, yeah, I do want to live a life where I can financially support myself, to have that kind of independence and be like, oh, if I want to do this, if I want to, you know, take this holiday or something like that. But at the same time, when you're in an industry like this and you want to, you know, go away for however many weeks, you've got to find a gap in the schedule, and it's not always going to happen
Mhm.
because it is very much like, you know, saddle up and you're in for the long run. And the way that some of the tournaments work as well, like taking up weekends. I know that's been a big thing for a few of, you know, my friends and colleagues as
Yeah.
well, where it's like, you know, maybe you do work your 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, and then you log on at the weekend, then you're giving up your weekends to be doing something like this as well. So it means that there's not a minute goes by where you really have a chance to sort of, you know, have that extra social life where, you know, there are people that would want to. And I feel like I'm quite blessed in sort of my little corner of esports that you have people who do actually go outside and touch grass once in a while. So it's, you know, missed opportunities in that sense. And
Yeah.
I think definitely I see it as well, because there are a few times when you start to realize it, when I'll like go to a social function with my friends. Maybe it's like a birthday or like just a get together, something like that, and everyone will be like, "Oh, wow, Hazza's here!" Like, it's not too often that you're here. Like, just, you know, that you maybe wouldn't be reliable for it or something like that,
Yeah.
just because stuff keeps coming up. And then they're like, "Oh, well, what are you doing at the moment?" And everyone's always so interested to hear in what you're doing. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, where are you going?" And usually it coincides with me being like, oh, well, I'm going to this country, I'm doing this and that. And
Yeah.
it sounds really good from the outside, but at the same time, I don't want to be sat there saying like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, when like you're putting up a front at the same time, because you know, the day to day isn't as exciting or glamorous or anything, you know, like you got to be very self-sufficient. We're sat here doing a podcast, for goodness sake, you know, stuff like that. The constant need to feel like I've got to put a tweet out or my name is going to fade into obscurity, not just appearing on the shows, but appearing on the timeline when it makes sense. Stuff like that. Things which I like, as much as I like putting out content in terms of actually tweeting, if do I have to say what I've had for lunch? No, not particularly, but is it going to remind people that I'm a human being? Yeah. And that's like the scary part sometimes. I want to take a minute off. What happens when I want to go and take a holiday, you know, with my partner and whatever, and we're out there, and she's like, why are you on your phone? Well, oh, because there's just been a roster move, and if I don't say that I've acknowledged it, then am I part of the scene anymore? It's
Yeah.
like crazy, and it's really shit as well at times, because I got to be honest, stuff like that, you know, you don't want to be in that position. But I guess it's at the same time, it's like the the 2024 working man in esports equivalent of, I've just received an email, my dear, I'm going to quickly reply to HR about something that's come up. You know, it's like, no, Dreamas, Vong, and fucking, you know, Hearthbeat have been signed to Metasport, and you must comment on this right now.
It's
Stuff like
yeah.
that.
No, I completely understand you there. It's don't get us wrong, for anybody listening as well. What we do is awesome, right? What we do is
100%.
amazing,
Yeah, this
right?
isn't a way for us to complain. It's just like
No, it's just
there are
saying that
differences, you know?
there are differences to it, and because it's different to what everybody else does, the difficulties aren't seen as easy. They're different, right? And that's what kind of makes things a little bit interesting with our relationships, right? And that's another question I wanted to turn in your direction here, Hazza. How do you balance everything? Because you said, okay, this is difficult in a way of getting of bring your phone out. There's a roster move. I got to make a tweet here. With how do you balance that with quality time, with you know, splitting that and saying there's no post from me tonight. Quality time with friends, girlfriend, family.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think you definitely got to have a balance, and to be honest, it's not the kind of thing as like that's a very exaggerated example, because it's not like I'm going to be hanging around with people that I care about and I'm on my phone like, what is happening right now? You know,
Yeah.
not unless you've got a free moment and it makes sense to. Do you know what I mean? But then I'll just sort of be like, all right, okay, let me collect my thoughts on this really quick and get something done, and it'll literally just be like a 1-2 minute thing. You know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, what are people saying about this? You know, for too long, because otherwise you just get completely caught up in it and there's no free time in the day. In terms of balancing it though, yeah, you know, you have to make those sacrifices in a sense. It's the kind of thing where it's like, I know that maybe if I'm doing a show, it goes 2 best of 3s, I'm not going to be done until like 7 p.m. in the evening, whereas, you know, the normal person like, you know, who I'm with is going to get off work at 5, and it's like an extra 2 hours gap there that's different. But communication is really important, and it's, you know, something that you've always got to be working on. If a map finishes, I'm like, okay, well, this map's just finished, and sort of trying to explain it to people around you. I think explaining what you do will be the most valuable thing that you can really do to have other people around you be interested. And if they do care about you as well, then they're going to want to know. You know, they want to know more about this interesting aspect of your life that you can really open up and be like, hey, this is, you know, what's happening with this. I was saying just then about when I was telling you earlier in this episode, oh, it's 10 human beings in the server. That's how I said it to my girlfriend, right? Like, you know, you're telling a story, and these are the people that you have, and this is how many rounds. This is the team that I've predicted to win, and they're also the team that's just lost the series. Anyway, here's a pizza. You know, like that was our Saturday afternoon. We were just you know, watching the last maybe 2 rounds of Meta Sport versus Sweet and Sour, and I was just explaining to her like, yeah, this is how it works. And yeah, I feel like when Blast comes to London, like later this year, I have a plan of probably taking her just to sort of like, you know, because the way that I sell it as well.
Of your life.
Yeah, and not just that, not just for it like to be for me, but also because I know that she'll probably enjoy it. Because if you take a step back for a second, it's like you have pyrotechnics, you have lighting, you have alcohol, you have a noisy crowd, and you know, you have some players from the same country that you're from, so you can probably get behind them there and be excited for it. So like, you know, it's good vibes. In terms of like family as well, that's a little bit different for me. But yeah, like I don't know, it's just sort of having that balance. I think the hard part with family is because as someone who works from home and someone who still lives at home with a sort of thought process to move out in due time, it's like, you know, your work environment and then the environment where you spend time with other people, the lines can sort of blur a little bit, I think. And as well, like, you know, how you eat your meals if you're eating at the desk. I saw a few stupid tweets recently, like yesterday. I don't know if you follow Ace on Twitter, maybe Pavlos, the
Which one?
R6 Ace of Pyrite. Yeah, he posted a couple unsavory photos, or savory, I should say, savory food on his mousepad being eaten. Chamberine as well, then followed it up with probably the most disgusting thing I've seen this week so far, and it is only Tuesday. But baked beans on the mousepad with the bean juice dripping onto the pad.
Oh,
like,
no.
Just disgusting. But the point I'm trying to make here is, yeah, if you're like, you know, working, leisure, eating all in the same place, how do you make that kind of distinction? And that's the question that I'll then frame to you.
Ooh, yeah, it's a hard one, that, because obviously, as you can see behind me, that's my bed, right? So I've set up a studio in my own bedroom at my dad's house. So yeah, I finished uni and I'm back here because saving money, waiting till my girlfriend finishes her uni, and then we can see what we're gonna do, so on and so forth. But, but yeah, cutting hot costs was one of the decisions I made for 2023, 2024. Is that cutting costs, save up. That's what I'm doing. So I'm kind of forced in a way. I forced myself to be in the same space. I could definitely rent out a space and use it in my studio, but then I wouldn't be saving costs. So what I do to kind of get out of my own way, or get out of the space where I play games and sleep, is that I often will move my work environment. Say if I'm studying for a match whatnot, I'd go to a cafe.
Yeah.
I'd go to a place where there's Wi-Fi. I can set up my laptop or tablet and start making notes for my upcoming match, because that's a big part of my life now as a commentator.
Preparing, right? Like
I
that
often
is
make notes.
suddenly the day to day is the
That's the
preparation
day-to-day.
part.
So
Yeah.
whether that's also VOD reviewing some previous matches, right? I can go to the cafe, have my earphones on, watch the game on one screen, and on my laptop and on my tablet make notes. You know, it's an awesome gig. It's an awesome gig to have to just make notes and watch video games, nerd about them. But yeah, I do that because and I often go to cafes where there are other people working as well. Because if other people around you, it's what I did in university as well. Because I lived in a studio apartment, where I slept, I ate, I played video games, where I had friends come around. It was all in one space, all one room, right? So it was very hard to concentrate sometimes. So I often went to the university itself and study. And when COVID happened as well, and that became more difficult, I take it in turns I had a couple of friends that we'd take it in turns where we'd host a study session at our places, because when you have other people around you working, it's more easy to do. So that's what I do to deal with that. It does become a little bit more difficult, and if you're sitting in front of your screen, because you need both your monitors, you need your camera, you're making content, it's easy to just distract yourself and see a Discord message and be like, oh, game's up, I'll play a game now and not do any work. That's the distraction I do face. And I do I do have an issue with sometimes, and I allow myself to be distracted. But yeah, we're working on it. We're human beings. We're not perfect.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, that's my way.
I'm guilty of it too, man. It's like, especially with me and Cairo in a duo, because we'll just sort of be talking to each other, and it's like, you want to play rank, mate? Sure. 3 rank games later, we could have VOD reviewed. We could have done a practice cast. We could have done any of those things. But
it's because you're best mates as well, and your relationship isn't only with casting. It is
very true.
And games, and so like also having another. I think that's also a benefit of having a best friend as a caster, right? Because you can talk about many other things and have a deeper relationship, and that deeper relationship reflects on your commentary as well.
Yeah, it's true. There is the other side to it as well, though, whereas I feel like sometimes if you then want to give feedback or something like that, or it gets to a position where you're both having a discussion about something, because of the friend element, it's like you want to sort of pull your punches a little bit. I don't want to be like, oh, this was bad or something like that. But I think, to be honest, we're definitely working towards that. I'm VOD reviewing way more than I did when we started out as a duo. I'm watching back pretty much every cast. I'm watching VODs of other teams to make sure that that's worked into what I'm doing. And sure, for some people this will be like a bare minimum, but I think as someone who's gone from doing this semi-professionally and in sort of random different tournaments and disciplines and stuff, to someone who is literally just now treating it fully like their job, it's the necessary step-ups that you've got to make if you really value your work. So yeah, just the extra time in the day. And look, I would love to go to a cafe and do it, but I don't have a laptop or a tablet or anything, and I think my phone is probably a bit too strenuous to sort of be hunched over and trying to do everything. So it's definitely an investment that I'm looking to make, and I think towards the end of this year, if a couple of big gigs come in and ones that I'm sort of happy to have landed, if I can finally go back to Berlin, then maybe the laptop comes out. But for now, yeah, and also all of the Apple stuff is so overpriced, man, with it's going to cost you £200 for a pencil. I don't. Yeah, I'm not on with that.
No, that's why I've avoided Apple at all costs. Apple, if you want to sponsor this, we do enjoy you.
I don't think Apple is going to be sponsoring.
I don't think Apple would ever want to sponsor us.
Keep it real with you.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's one of those ecosystems that once you get hooked, you kind of keep on putting money in it. And anyway,
sure,
it's a different conversation. I kind of wanted to draw it to another subject. We haven't gone to it naturally, so this will be a bit of a jump. But have you ever met an esports idol before, and what was that encounter like?
Yeah, I have on a couple of different occasions, but it's hard to say though. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of people I looked up to, I'm now either speaking to on a regular basis,
right,
or just you know,
So that person used to be an idol. It doesn't matter.
would
whether
like
that is
still
an idol
talk to
anymore.
them, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult. I think there are, like, to be honest, the idols for me, like people where I'm like, wow, that is someone that I really do look up to, is probably more in Counter-Strike than like in
Yeah.
Valorant, because Valorant, especially with EMEA, I don't want to say that it's been there, done that, because that's not a fair assumption.
Let's
But
say
like,
that
you know,
Counter-Strike has
I've
been there since you've been growing up and learning
sure,
about esports.
sure.
So it's closer to your heart because it's what you grew up to learn.
Hmm.
Valorant hasn't been around long enough for people to become idols. And
True,
you know?
true, but I can still remember like sitting on my sofa, for example, with my uni flatmates watching Liquid versus Fnatic series number 1000 when they're like, I don't know, it was either a seeding game or something at Reykjavik or something like that, and
Yeah.
it would be, you know, Mitch and Tom casting, and you know, literally the other night I'm playing fucking some simulation game with trains and buses with Mitch, and it's just like, you know, we're talking and doing our thing because like it's just someone that I speak to. Whereas, you know, then maybe it would have been like, oh, VCT, like, oh, there's loads going on. Not to say that it's sort of brought away from any of that magic or anything, but I think the thing with CS as well is like you have had so long to like build up some of these names. They are, you know,
Yeah.
legends in the space. You know what I mean? And I think a few of them have definitely disappeared, or maybe it's turned to fool's gold and started to peel away a little bit behind the layers. I think people such as Semler, for example, now are completely defunct in the space. It's completely ruined his reputation, and a lot of those moments which people would have enjoyed before due to personal comments that they've made. It does also make me wonder, to a casual viewer who isn't tapped into Twitter and knows what these people are saying, do they still just not hold that opinion of the person? Is it the kind of thing where they still have that idolization, like, oh, what happened to their voice? Where did they go?
Right.
You know, kind of thing. But a funny little thing aside, it would be that I remember I did an impression of Semler's happy ace call with me like doing a very
With the Deagle
heavy
Ace?
like American accent, like, oh, happy. I used to go. I remember when I was at school, me and my friends would like joke about it. We were like, you know, little squirmy kids with
sweating
like
bullets?
like voice cracks, like, he's sweating bullets. It's the quad kill of the ace.
Sweating
You know?
bullets?
Yeah. Like I can remember the whole thing, but yeah, stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
the one person who I'd probably hope to meet, just because I feel like they're a real iconoclast of sort of, you know, CS, would maybe be someone like Anders, for example, just because
Right.
he's been there the whole time and seen
whole time.
everything since
Yeah.
the beginning, you know, really since the beginning. Like, sure, he maybe missed out on a little bit of like the early stuff, because I'm pretty sure he came in and go, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to you know, like
Yeah.
misinterpret the track record, but from what I remember, like hearing his interviews and stuff, he was started in the Danish scene as well, like where he's from. But how many other talent members can you say that have sort of actually kept their
Stuck around that
place
much?
through thick and thin? So that would be something
say
for
that,
me.
no.
What about you, man? I don't know, because you've been to the CS events, you've been to the Valorant events in terms of your two worlds colliding. What's it like for you? Because it's even different, right? You're like working with these people on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think the same thing goes to me in regards to Counter-Strike being a more, or the talent in the Counter-Strike scene seeming a little bit more prestigious, given the prestige of the game itself and
Sure.
the fact that I grew up with it as well. Valorant is fairly new, and I also work in it, right? So I can't give myself any credit here. Although the co-workers are very, very talented and very good at what they do. I think when I met Pansy, it's a little bit, it was a bit surreal in my head. Obviously, I didn't be like, "Oh, Pansy, big fan." You know, I every time I met someone that is in the same industry and I've looked up to, I've tried to stay composed. Like, even though in my head I'm a little bit excited and it feels a bit of a imposter syndrome. Wait, I'm working the same event as this person. God damn. you know.
It's the justification, you know.
Yeah. It's like it's awesome at the time. It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
It is, isn't it? I think the funny part as well is we're sat on a podcast here, and it's like if any of them see this, it's like, do you know what I mean?
I mean, even if they do, it's like
there's a reason that you respect them. Sure.
Yeah, I don't hide that I appreciate their work, whether that's Pansy, whether that's Harry and Hugo, whether I'm just bringing up names that I've worked with, and I was like, oh my god, I'm working with. And I might have said that to them as well. I think I've told Parla as well once when I worked with him. It's like, dude, I've been watching your videos ever since I was like, I've been watching your videos when I was a
Man
kid.
Truth.
Man Truth, right? When I worked with Parla, that was I definitely said that. When I met Zoe, I was like, it took me a while. Funny interaction with Zoe, by the way. If I'll bring this up for a sec. I was in the green room. Oh, how does it happen every time? So I met Frankie and Zoe. They were both. They were both. It was a very similar story to both of them. I'll bring up Frankie first. When I met Frankie, Frankie, by the way, Counter-Strike. Well, mostly known for a time in Counter-Strike as an interviewer. But I met her recently, and she took a guest role in VCT. So she was a bit frantic because she just lost something, and she was like, "Have you seen this?" And I haven't even talked to her before. I was like, "Oh, that's Frankie in front of me." She just saw me, and I was like, "No." I was like fully calm. I haven't seen it. What are you looking for? How can I help you? And we started looking for her tablet. We found it eventually. He was like, "Oh, I'm so glad I found it." And I was like, "Hi, I'm Pavlos, by the way." It's like, yeah, Frank, yeah, I know exactly who you are. And there's like this very sweet interaction. It's like, oh, we're colleagues. But in my head, I was like,
yeah.
This is a face I knew ever since I knew what esports was, and I looked up to it as well. So, it's nice to know that a lot of these people are also nice people as well.
Sure.
Right? Because in your head is like never meet your idols, right? And I don't know if I ever had someone in my head that was like full idol status, right? Full like, I look up to this person, I want to be this person. I don't think I've ever really had that, but there are people I was like, damn, I really like what they do. I could be there. Like I would want to be their friend, you know, that type of thing. And yeah, meeting people and realizing they're actually pretty darn decent human beings and pretty lovely and pretty respectful and interested about you as well as you're interested about them. I think that's awesome, because many people that can find that sort of fame or have that prestige can very easily develop an ego. I could develop an ego. I had the moments that I've developed an ego and I've slapped myself and be like, yo, what are you doing? You're nobody. Yeah. Chill, right? It's very easy. It's very easy once you get that appreciation, when you got people tweeting at you saying like, you're good. It's very easy to develop an ego. So if you're able to be grounded and be good at what you do, that's really darn cool. So I think that's what I take away from this, is like meeting idols, meeting people that I respect, but also grounded, is like really hard. Yeah.
It's not just like recognizing those that are established sort of at the top level, but then also looking towards like who are the up and comers as well. I think it's really important to sort of see things both ways and not just be like, oh, there are these people that have accomplished all of these things, but it's like, you know, what's the next generation? Who's next up? You know, how can I maybe help in a way like that is going to be beneficial for both of us? Because I think, again, I've like done VOD reviews with people who are sort of making their way through the scene right now, and you go back and you look, and maybe even I did a talk at like college recently or a couple of months ago, and when you break it down to the bare elements, you can be a bit more reflective, because you're like, oh, well, maybe I should do this more often, or like, this is actually something to think about, and you can sort of twist it back. But to talk on the ego thing for a little bit, I think it's important.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched Unnamed with Wyatt River, but when Wyatt was with Bren,
this is podcast, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I watched an episode of this. Yeah.
With Bren, he was just like, I have a couple of moments where he sort of, I am the greatest person on earth, I am insane, and then like the sort of the self-reflective, like, actually, you know, this wasn't great. Like it's so hard to find yourself like a strong middle ground sometimes, honestly.
It is.
I think, as I said before, I always feel like you need at least a little bit of an ego, or you'll get absolutely destroyed when you step up on the stage and the camera turns on and there's an audience behind you, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna shit the bed here, because like all of the many conversations we've had with Janiro, it's like, you go, you do your show, you get hired. If they see that you don't shit the bed, then there's somewhere else that you can go and not shit the. I'm not going to use that phrase again, because I remember I did actually end up describing that in detail on sort of one of the other episodes. If you want to go watch episode 8, I believe it was.
Or if you want to see someone shitting the bed, watch the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard documentary. Go ahead.
Topical. I've not seen it, in fact. Ego, Pavlos.
Ego. How do you deal with ego?
Yeah.
I guess. I think it's something I struggle with now as well, because on the one hand, I want to have the confidence to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you believe you're good, you can be very good. I think it's very inherent. Believing you're good and being good somehow have a very close relation to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow having the belief that you can be at your peak performance can get you there. Don't know how that works. Brain works in mysterious ways, right? And I think that's something that top athletes look at as well. It's like whether with visualization, if you can see yourself winning, there's more chances you win. It's weird. I don't know how that works, right?
Sure.
It could all be
think
placebo. It could be anything. But you also need to be humble.
Mm-hmm. And
you also need to recognize when you're making mistakes, but also not be in your own head when you make mistakes. Just a recent example. It's happened in one of the recent podcasts, but also I look back at old work of mine. I'm like, damn, I was good in that moment. This is what I really liked. Why am I not there now? Because and now I would consider myself better than then. But when I look at those VODs, I'm like, wait, am I really? Have I been developing enough? Have I been focusing at the right areas? When you're in a constant battle with yourself, questioning things, it's hard to have an ego. But when you're in front of the camera, you have to have that ego. I don't know if ego's the right word.
You're gonna get cooked.
You have to.
Yeah.
You're gonna get
confidence,
cooked. You're not gonna
self-belief.
You've got to be confident. The moment you start questioning yourself on broadcast, that's when the mistakes happen. And when you start thinking about the mistakes during the broadcast, more mistakes happen. And one of the things that I do, I try to do, is when I think of a mistake and then I'm in my own head, is like, I just flick myself. I flick my hand like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I flick my hand and I'm like, stop it. Okay, flick my hand. I punish myself. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? Stop punishing yourself in your head. That's my thing. I punish myself in my own head. And when I do that, I do more mistakes. And it's very easy to do. It's something I struggle with. So I don't really have an answer to it necessarily, but it's a constant battle.
It's all about perception, I think.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, it depends as well. Like, even recently when I've been going back and reviewing some of my own footage, it's like, it depends what lens you're looking at it through. An example I can give was a conversation that Kyra and I had yesterday. Like, you can look at how a round is structured and be like, oh, this is the play-by-play, this is the color. With the knowledge in mind that we wanted to, like, run a hybrid from round to round, then maybe it's, not the intended goal being achieved, whether it's, good commentary on paper or not, just stylistically for what we want and how we feel about it. Whereas if I go into the view with it like, I feel like I achieved what I wanted to on this round specifically perfectly, this is some of my best work, but in the scope of like the entire thing, maybe this didn't work out in a way where it was consistently flipped enough or something along those lines. And I'm using some very technical terminology here for people that maybe aren't specifically involved with it, but to sort of say what you're saying as well, something that I think I saw as a big improvement is I can just look at where I was and where I am now in terms of stuff like you said, making a mistake. In the moment, you're like, oh, that was bad, like that was really bad. But then you can
Yeah.
just sort of like, literally a moment later, snap, I'm not thinking about it anymore. We're on to the next. There's something else happening.
Mhm.
Because if you let it sort of linger, if you dwell on it for too long, then it'll just ruin your day and you'll be tilted. Because I've had that before. I can remember, I think it would have been around about the time that Ginny and I first did our first online broadcast together, was with British Esports. And I can remember doing British Esports and just being there and being so tilted, like, what am I saying? Like, what is going on? But like, you never let that guise down. No one's ever going to know that. But you know, people are always going to be thinking about their own personal performance, and when you make those improvements, then you will see it. Always important to just take a step back and look at the view, because otherwise you'll never see how far you've really come. But at the same time, keep looking forwards and seize the day. If you keep looking backwards, you won't go anywhere, you know? Maybe.
Maybe. All right. I've got one more question. We've already done an hour. It's, I think, one of our biggest episodes, actually.
This is the thing too. I'm looking at all the questions that I wrote down. So I wrote down, what's the hardest decision you've had to make? But I think we got that when you were like, you know, not doing the masters and going into esports. What would you be doing if you weren't in esports? Again, it's sort of there. One question I don't know if we touched on quickly. What's your escape? You know, where do you go when you're not doing esports?
I got many escapes. I think escapes.
That sounded pretty dark for a second.
No. As in, like, it's one of the things I'm actually quite good at. Is having things
like running card games. I know you did Magic.
Yeah, many things. Whether that's, and I think a lot of them are, well, at least they used to, not as much anymore. But well, depends. Okay, one of the escapes is workout, whether that is some sort of sport or gym. Plainly put, it's one of the ways to get out of your own head and feel fit as well. That's one of the things I do. Card games, video games, all of it being also another part of it. But I think the biggest all-encompassing escape for me is other people.
Sure.
Whether it's card games, I'm playing with other people. I'm interacting with friends. We're having a fun time together. But it's video games. I never play video games alone. I never did. I was always a social gamer. Always a social gamer. I might have this random solo queue game that I will play from time to time because why not? But I'm a social gamer. I play with people. The reason I play is to hang out with friends, make jokes, all of that. I get out of the house. It's usually to meet someone, have a coffee with someone, have a discussion. I think people is my escape. It helps me broaden my horizons for a bit, listen to their day, listen to what their problems are, and it relieves me from my day to day. So that's my escape. What about you?
Same kind of thing, I guess. But for me, I feel like it's I don't know. I have a variety of different things. It's like, you know, I'll go see other people. Maybe I'll go for a run. I try to get into running a little bit more recently. Sometimes if you've got the time, cooking, because I think if you're commentating and stuff, you don't have the time to make like a proper meal. But I've started cooking, and do you know what? Today I'm probably going to post a picture of the butter chicken that I made because it was very nice. Really, really good. I made ramen before, made a few different soups, stuff like that. You know, like just something different. Cinema, I suppose. Still, it's like, you know, you are consuming media, you're part of the chain, but like I don't know, it's a bit different. You can get yourself lost in a story. Sure. Books is something that I think I'm gonna get into now. I'll probably read June if I can, just because it interests me. And yeah, I don't know. I was always someone who would like play football, but I watch football when I have those weekends free. See, that's another thing where it conflicts, right? Like if firstly, I'm only going to the home matches usually, but if I'm commentating, I've got to prioritize making money, so I can't go to those. So it's frustrating, but yeah, just stuff like that. To be honest, man. It's difficult to add too much more. Traveling, I do love traveling. And that's also maybe a reason for sort of still staying here at home, is that money is spent on going to other places and doing things.
It's so crazy how traveling has changed for me. because before esports, traveling was all vacation. It was all going to see family.
Yeah.
That's all traveling used to be. 90% of my traveling now is for gigs.
Same.
It's crazy, because I remember the first time I ever got on a plane, I was like, oh, I'm one of those people that go on flights for business. I'm going for work. I was like, wait, what? This is cool. What? So I remember that first time I was walking through the airport. I was like, I'm on business.
I'm a businessman.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm a businessman. Like,
Briefcase, suit, tie.
it's insane, and I was being paid for it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going for work. That was dope. That was a great feeling, and ever since, that's kind of been the norm now, which is crazy to look at. And you're right. I always loved traveling as well. You're right. It's a brilliant thing, and whenever I'm in a country of different, whenever I'm in a different country, I try and explore, even though I don't. I made a pact with myself that I got to tell you, I failed. I failed at this pact. I told myself, wherever I'm in a new country, I'm going to make time to see it. Whether that's half a day or a full day or just a few hours, I'm going to go explore. I failed in that way. Didn't do it in India. And I've been there twice.
Yeah.
What other place haven't I done? I think I've been pretty okay at most places. Sweden, Poland, but Germany, and various Germany cities, by the way. Mostly I work in Germany, where that's Berlin, but I've been to Cologne, I've been to München, I've been so I have found what time to explore those, but it's one of those packs I need to do with myself again.
When I did Spain, when we did Madrid, I think the issue with that show is that we were at a convention hall outside of the city, nearer to the airport than anywhere else. So it wasn't until we'd finished both show days and had the afternoon and evening to actually walk around the city that we got to have a look at anything, really. And places like Madrid, for example, they are pretty big, so you want a couple of days to go everywhere. So you didn't really get the most of it.
No.
I think, like, it's hard. It's hard, and like that's the thing now. I like traveling. I want to go and do stuff. I might as well say it here. Gonna go to Malta next month, at the start of next month, and then Rome after that. So there will be quite a few joke-related tweets to the fact that, I've been to my favorite Northern European country, because for those who don't know, Malta in the NLC for League of Legends, which is their Tier 2 circuit, and the Tier 2 circuit for Valorant, Polaris, Challengers, Northern Europe, it's also part of that as well.
Malta
because
is
it
officially
had
a
nowhere
Northern
to
European country.
But
why isn't it in for Italy or something?
I don't know. And I already told you about this, though, but Pro League is going to be on. And hey, look, that's an opportunity that I may just for one of those days. But I think, not before seeing everything else that the country has to offer, which probably won't take me as many days because it is very small. But there's lots of water, lots of beaches, and just needs to... I'll just go ahead and chill out. So yeah, should be good.
All right, since we're getting to know each other, this is the last question I'll bring up, and hopefully we can close it out in a nice, lovely bow. Maybe a couple sentences each for this. But what comes next? What comes after your current? What comes next? Whether it's your current journey, what you're working towards, or what comes next after casting. Like, what's your end goal here, if there is one?
Maybe this is why I asked my question. I was trying to push things forward because I didn't want to have to confront the unknown, the future. I don't know. This is the difficulty as well. I think it can be quite hard to see past the next 2-3 months in this job, just because you don't know what you're going to be doing. There's a strong possibility. Would hope not. There is an off chance that maybe there's absolutely no work. I never get a gig ever again for whatever reason. All of the powers that be decide, you know what, this guy's kind of whack. I don't want to hire him again. Or maybe he said something wrong. Maybe he said something we didn't like. That's nothing to do with us anymore. And bang, it's done. But I think forging strong links with organizers and people, and having certain groups where it's like, yeah, I love working with these guys actually, and then make them want to work with you too, and just make your own working life enjoyable. Like, do yourself some favors, I think is a big thing, and yeah, making strong relationships with people. But to then answer the question of what's next, it's pretty hard. I don't know if I can give an answer, but I think the
It's like-
long term for me
Yeah.
would be, move out into my own place, have a set space to be doing commentary. I've already made upgrades with, what the whole standing desk and everything means that I can, transform the workspace a little bit. And as you can see, there is a blanket in play. But as I lift it up, and just making those improvements. So,
Yeah.
making it more like what I want it to be. I guess, with sort of it being like a job as well. And yeah, sort of moving away, having all of that, my own personal goals to achieve within casting. But then if you're saying afterwards, that's a difficult one because I do have, my university degree, and there are certain places that I could go with that if things were to stop. But at the same time, like I say, it's hard to sort of
It's hard to
envision
say.
that right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
To be fair,
just standard life
young,
stuff, I guess.
right?
It's
we're
tough.
still young.
Yeah.
We're still young, right? And even if we weren't young, we've got options, right? If things don't work, we go this way. If things do work, we continue, and so on and so forth, right? And I think we're still at the very beginning of our esports careers. It's not something that we can say, oh, right, what do you do? What are you going to do after esports? Because for many, that's the question right now, right? You've got commentators at the top of the level. They've been doing it for ages. Maybe they're kind of tired. Maybe the spark is running out, right? So for them, the question becomes, what do you do after esports? I think for us, though, we haven't been there. We haven't conquered.
This is the thing with
right?
me too. Like, if I was gonna say
So
something
as
that I
long as
wanted to do,
conquering what we want to do still is up in the air,
sure.
and also the prospect of it not getting to that point existing, it's always going to be hard to say what comes next.
Like, I still not had like a full proper crowd cast. Like, I had a little bit of it at iSeries, but I'm talking. I'm casting and I can hear it coming through the mix, and there's a crowd, and everything's going crazy. That kind of thing. Like, that's something I want to be part of. Arenas in the far future, but you don't say that. You get your head down and you work at your level until you're ready for it. So yeah, man, we will see. And to be honest, I feel like even if I did move out of commentary, the passion is still there for the scene. Like, I saw some stuff recently about teams not really getting paid to go to LAN and stuff. Like, if I had a bit of extra money, I wouldn't mind just sending a team to LAN, like, just to be part of it and to sort of have that experience, or to go somewhere or want to, like, compete myself. I don't, like, the dream of me being on any kind of team that goes anywhere, I think has died. Maybe not in a coaching role if I want to, like, take that up, but for me, like, I've still never taken my PC to a LAN, played in a tournament on a LAN with a team,
Sure.
I've only ever casted it. Yeah, just for fun.
Sure.
Like, as just as something to do.
I've never done that before.
Mm.
We could do that on the next LAN.
Maybe, man. Come to the UK. Come experience an Epic LAN. Come
Epic LAN,
experience an iSeries. But
I've
now I've got to ask
Epic
you,
WAN.
what's next for you, Pavlos? What's next for you?
I think it's like we said. I haven't conquered what I wanted to conquer. I'm still on this journey. I've got ideas of what could happen next. I start a business, whatever that business is. I've got some ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to make like a restaurant, actually,
well,
or like a bar.
For me as well. We got plenty of ideas here. We're idea machines. I think that's something that we got pretty good at here. And it's something that we develop is that we think on our feet. We haven't got things laid out for us, so we've got to think for ourselves. We've got to plan things out ourselves, and it's skills we're developing still. But yeah, for me,
skill issues.
Skill issues. Well, we hope skill issues can grow in a way that that we enjoy and we are happy with as well, because it's also a matter of we enjoying it, but also people listening in on it. It's a process. We know it. We started it knowing that it's going to be a process. But for me personally, is that esports still got a few good years in me for sure. Even if I do plateau, because I did mention early on that I am at a point where things are not as heavily, not as drastically increasing for me. Right, I've been at a very similar point for a year and a half now, a couple of years, which in esports is a very long time. So, if that's the case for me for a while, then sure, I'll find a different avenue. But I'm happy to continue with this grind and try and find the momentum again to reach greater heights, then that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think even for someone like me, still being at the same level that I was last year in terms of pyramid, but also knowing that I've improved and, getting more jobs that are on the side rather than it just being like, Polaris by itself or something like that. Working with the TO and knowing that there are improvements down the line and just working towards making things better overall. So all of the above, honestly.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's not just skill issues, it's skill development. We're developing skills right now. That's what we're doing. And maybe I'll open a bar, restaurant, cafe, whatever in the future. Who knows?
We all got one of those ideas, I swear.
Every person I
speak to. And every time I'm like, wait, is this too generic?
And then I watch an episode of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and I'm like, dude, I'm so finished. If I do this,
you're an idiot
it's
sandwich.
Gonna be terrible. Yeah.
All right, well, guys, thank you very much for tuning in for another episode of Skill Issues. Hazza, again, awesome to have a nice chat with you and getting to know you a little bit better. This was a unique episode, different to any of the other ones. But guys, if you did enjoy it or want to hear anything else that we've got in store for you, or listen into previous episodes, tune in on Spotify, YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We haven't done any TikToks yet. We're failing in that regard, but we will. Twitch, all of it at Skill Issues Live. We'll be there. 5-star ratings, likes, all the jazz. Thumbs up from me and Hazza. Have a very nice day, evening, weekend. We'll see you again next week.